Are you tired of not being able to track key metrics towards strategic objectives that grow your company? Maybe you're struggling to find what truly matters when it comes to tracking, or you're expanding to different marketplaces with different measurable metrics, and you're not sure where to begin. Ultimately, you're looking for a robust solution that tracks success, proves value and ROI, and continuously improves your operations, all from one dashboard. If that's you, then stick around for a few moments as I discuss the challenges that e-commerce brands face when tracking KPIs. I share best practices on how to improve the performance of your operations and provide tips on how to expand into multiple marketplaces. Get ready to learn exactly how to implement effective tracking and reporting into your business using a service you have never seen before. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Stone, the e-commerce mastermind show. My name is Robert Runyon, and I will be your host. This is the show where we take a deep dive and discuss hot e-commerce topics and share tips that allow decision makers to take their businesses to the next level. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Stone. My name is Robert Runyon. Today, I am gathered by James Dihardjo. James, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Robert. It's 12 a.m. here, so ready to get started, mate.
Awesome. I appreciate you for hopping on the call and joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about the most important KPIs to monitor for e-commerce brands. James, just give our listeners and our watchers just a little bit of an excerpt about what we're going to be talking about, how it will benefit them, and why KPIs are important.
Yeah, so I think it's a good place to start. So our business, Merchant Spring, is actually built around measuring KPIs, and some of those KPIs are across multiple marketplaces. So we're going to talk about the KPIs that, from our experience, sellers believe are important, just give a different perspective from a different part of the world, and hopefully some of your listeners will take away some, perhaps some other metrics they should be measuring or looking at more closely.
Yeah, you said it perfectly there. So we're going to be talking about KPIs as a concept first. And one of the main questions I have for you, why would an e-com brand need to track KPIs and other metrics? What types of KPIs are there to track?
Yeah, so look, I think if you're an e-com brand and you're selling on marketplaces, right, like Amazon or Walmart or whatever, to put it in really basic terms, some of those KPIs and hitting them and maintaining certain levels in those KPIs will simply just keep your account open, right? So, to use Amazon for an example, if you're talking about your seller health metrics, which are essentially a KPI, if you kind of like failing in that area, you perhaps like shipment rate or your customer response time or return rate or whatever it is. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on just seller health, but really what I'm saying is, all KPIs are important and they should care, because at the baseline, if you're not even getting those things right, you can't even sell. Before even getting into the fancy stuff around profit KPIs and advertising KPIs. So I'm hoping that we can build on that a bit further in this session and cover a whole breadth of why KPIs are important. But yeah, look, at the crux of it, like the whole essence of selling on marketplaces as a brand is actually all governed by hitting KPIs of all sorts.
Yeah, you made a lot of perfect sense there, and you really nailed it home. So, there's out-of-the-box KPIs, there's company-specific KPIs, there's traditional KPIs. Could you give me an example of the ways that you can easily track custom KPIs for your customers? Is that possible?
Yeah, so within our software, I'm not sharing screen just yet, but within our software, for example, our users, we can track kind of, if you're selling on multiple marketplaces, like if you've got Amazon, your Walmart, you might have your own website, you might have an Amazon account in a different region, like Canada or even the UK. For some of our users, it's actually quite important to they're tracking the KPIs of what percentage of sales come from what region, right? So, for example, one of our customers I was speaking to the other day, they were saying, his boss had said, right now, 10% of sales come from Walmart. Your KPI is to actually increase that to beyond 20%, right? That's not an out-of-the-box KPI. That's actually just something that business had just made up. How do they track that? They're just using our software, and it's a simple pie chart that just says, okay, 43% is coming from Walmart. I mean, that might sound a bit, childlike, but it's a good example of a custom KPI that a business is actually focusing on that, perhaps doesn't apply to a lot of people. Now, if we're talking about out of the box stuff, I really would want to kind of talk about the health side of things. Now, I've been having a lot of conversations with sellers in the US, actually about the Amazon IPI, so the Inventory Performance Index. So an interesting kind of metric or KPI, if you want to call it that. If you're not hitting it, then, you don't get access to enough storage space. And, you and I could debate this for hours, Robert, but that is a out of the box KPI that's extremely critical. I mean, if you don't have, good IPI performance, then you can't put your stock in. If you don't have stock, you can't make sales. It's all, again, very childlike kind of situation.
And if you don't have stock, you lose your rankings.
Of course. But yeah, it's kind of just showing that, that metric and that user that I was talking to the other day actually puts a lot of emphasis on both custom and the out of the box KPI. So hopefully that kind of gives your listeners a bit of an insight as to why both can be important.
No, you did make a lot of sense. So actually bringing this full scale, right? Like just starting out in business, yes, there's KPIs you want to track and monitor, but once that you grow to a certain level, let's say $1 million, because anything below that, you're still burning and churning and chugging along and trying to get to that $1 million mark. And once you hit that $1 million mark, that's when you start to scale. And is that when you see a lot of your customers coming over and really starting to track custom KPIs or company specific KPIs, or like what is that revenue threshold in which that you see people start to track more and more and more and more?
Yeah, look, I think you're right. It's more prevalent in sellers that are more mature. So perhaps the $1 million seller types. Obviously, they're trying to gain incremental sales, right? And whether that comes from another channel that they have, again, a custom KPI where they need to get a percentage of revenue from another channel. But by the same token, here in Australia, right, Amazon's fairly new, all marketplaces are fairly new. So even the smaller sellers that perhaps have been doing pretty well on their own website, they're probably not $1 million sellers, but they're actually setting up custom KPIs to, from the start of their journey, they're wanting to have a diversified revenue stream, right? So I'd say it varies, and it depends really where they are in the world.
No, I appreciate you for sharing that with me, James. So moving on over into multiple marketplaces as we continue our podcast, what challenges do sellers face in tracking and reporting when expanding to multiple marketplaces? Is it limited visibility, more time, etc.? Can you speak to some of those challenges?
Yeah. So look, I'm not going to name any particular marketplaces, Robert, in case both of our partners kind of get annoyed by that. But I would say that the main challenge with multiple marketplaces is, you have essentially different reporting. Like, to put it in really basic terms, you've got a different back end that you're kind of getting data out of, right? Some of the unnamed marketplaces don't even have any sort of reporting in their back end. They make some stuff available via API, but there's nothing you can kind of like get this date range, download, whatever. So that's why a lot of users come to us, because they're like, I can hook up eBay, Amazon, Walmart, FNAC, Cdiscount, Darty, whatever, and all of a sudden they're seeing it all in the same place. All the reports are harmonized. They're all the same. They're not like trying to understand what the hell is this versus what the heck is this. They're really kind of like harmonizing what they're seeing. So the main thing is the visibility and getting the data out of the channels. Now, what's really interesting, again, depends on where you are in the world, like especially in Europe, right? You actually have a lot of borders in that part of the world, and with those borders come vastly different languages. So, multi-channel selling becomes a language challenge as well, which, as you know, Robert, SEO terms and all that need to be localized and da. So, we could spend 30 minutes just talking about, one difficulty, but just hopefully those 2 points kind of give you a flavor of a couple of challenges that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, actually, you nailed it there, because I wouldn't want to get too granular, but at the same time, we could spend hours sitting here talking about all of the challenges and things that people face. So let me ask you this. So how do the multiple marketplace KPIs compare? You kind of hit on it there. Are they the same? Are they different? How, do they use different metrics? What data is available? What isn't? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, what's really interesting is that, if I'm thinking about, again, a couple of unnamed European marketplaces, they don't actually put so much emphasis on, for example, handling time, right? Like, you can kind of handle the order in however long you want, so long as the tracking number is completely valid. But you and I both know for Amazon, if you set a handling time, you must handle the order, have the tracking, like if you're doing FBM, that is, handle the order and put the tracking number in within its particular time, otherwise you're going to get penalized and so on. So there are nuances to that level. Like, some marketplaces don't care at all about this, and then some marketplaces care entirely. Like, some, like Amazon, have very strict content requirements, but then eBay is fairly lax, right? So, look, I think, again, even though there are differences, the way some sellers handle it is, you kind of take what's the marketplace that has the highest standard. If you actually adhere, typically it's Amazon. If you actually adhere to that, you're probably going to be good and set for, everywhere else you're selling, right? So, it's kind of like a yardstick way of kind of making sure your business is in check. But yeah, that's kind of how an example and how they handle it, if that makes sense, Robert.
No, it makes perfect sense. So let me ask you this while we're talking about multiple marketplaces. How does Merchant Spring integrate into multiple marketplaces? How's the data visualized in one place? Can you give me an example of Merchant Spring software and maybe walk me through a demo? Is that possible?
Yeah, if you just give me a second and I can share my screen here.
Of course.
So I'm assuming you can see the charts here on screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So really with marketplaces, to answer your question, how do we connect? With most of the marketplaces that we connect to, we actually have a OAuth flow in place, right? So what that means is that, you essentially click on the marketplace you want to connect, select your country, and then when you click authorize, a pop-up window comes up and it'll say, log into your Amazon account, and then it'll be asked do you authorize Merchant Spring to, connect to your Seller Central, blah, blah, blah. So we call that the OAuth flow. So that's how we connect. Beyond that, once the authority is granted, our tool draws in all the data from the marketplace, whether it's eBay or Walmart or Amazon, draws it all in via API, then starts to render all the data in what we call widgets. Essentially, what it's doing is it'll start to present all of your connected channels in different widgets, like sales or sales mix. And I think I mentioned this to you before, Robert. It starts to show, what percentage of your revenue is coming from what channel. And it starts to kind of build in forecasts, like where are you at sales-wise today versus a typical Wednesday. Then it starts to get even deeper into profitability by channel, advertising by channel, seller health, another KPI that I mentioned earlier, stock availability, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the beauty of this is that all channels that are connected to this tool are looked at through the same lens. So the reporting's the same, everything looks the same. So you're not trying to juggle like two different languages, so to speak, in terms of data. Like whether I'm looking at an Amazon or if I flick over here to an eBay, we're presenting the data to the user in the same language, the same charts and so on. So it really helps like those who are selling on multiple channels get a clear and easy view of what's going on really, really easily and having data all at the fingertips. So hopefully that gives you a pretty clear example of how we do it and what it looks like.
So thank you for sharing that, James. And actually, when you were talking about the inventory levels and the different channels in which you're selling product in, this is really beneficial for sellers because what it does is it tells you, oh, hey, 40% of my inventory was from Amazon, 30% was from Walmart, 20% was from Etsy, 10% was from eBay. All right, so now I know exactly where I need to allocate my inventory to certain areas, certain fulfillment centers, etc. And this makes their lives a lot easier, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just surfacing it's very simple metric to the user so they can make a decision like what you mentioned, Robert.
Yeah, and that's the power of this tool, having all of this data in one place, because you make decisions based on good data, right?
Yeah, well, we'd like to think so. Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay, question for you, James. So we're moving into the end of our podcast here. Let's say that a listener or viewer is currently just starting out and wants to learn how to calculate the profitability, goals, metrics. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, look, to give really neutral advice, Robert, I would say go and conduct some serious research on the internet. There's a lot of great resources out there. There's free spreadsheets, there's rough calculators and so on. There's even people that'll have YouTube channels dedicated to how to calculate your profitability per ASIN, right? So I think go out there and do some serious research and give it a go yourself, because sometimes doing all of this manually and helps with you as a seller, not you, Robert, the seller understanding more about the business and the landscape and the fee structure and where they're getting charged and why they're getting charged. So yeah, do research. But look, if you're willing to take a shortcut, I would say go and use the Merchant Spring Profit Calculator. Essentially the Merchant Spring platform has a free trial, right, for 14 days. So what you can do is just simply go and sign up for an account. It'll ask you to connect your Amazon store. You authorize Merchant Spring, and boom, it'll calculate store profit, and product level profit. So for every ASIN, it'll calculate the profit. It'll start to allocate all the fees that Amazon's charging you, whether it's advertising, fulfillment costs, or so on. So it's a two-part answer, Robert. So one, do your research, teach yourself some stuff and know where you're getting charged. Or take a shortcut, find some tools. Try us out. It's free to use, the Amazon Profit Calculator, or try out someone else out there. There's a lot of great resources out there.
I actually absolutely love that response, James. And there's going to be a link to download the profitability calculator in the description below this video for you guys to check out. So let's say that we have an existing seller that wants to improve their visibility in all of their marketplaces. What advice would you give to them? What would you tell them to go do?
Well, look, I could quite easily say go and sign up for an account with Merchant Spring, but more practically, I would say before you kind of go and look for a tool, try and understand like what you can get out from each of those marketplaces. So practically speaking, if you have a VA already, that might be a good solution for you, because they might be, you might want them to learn more about your business. And so maybe if you've got only 2 or 3 channels, if you've got an Amazon, an eBay, and a Walmart, maybe a VA is a good solution for you, right? Start there. If it kind of gets out of control, which is where a lot of users come to us, they're like, man, using VA, data's out of control, it's starting to get inaccurate, I need the reporting more often throughout the day, blah, 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 then consider a tool. Again, like I could quite easily say use Merchant Spring, but there are a lot of tools out there that allow you to have multiple marketplaces, but some of them are Amazon only. The thing with us is that we're Amazon, eBay, Walmart, the list goes on. There's 100+ marketplaces we connect to. So what I'm saying is to kind of step back is understand what you need, use that to help you find a tool that you need. And if you have multi-marketplaces and not just one, use Merchant Spring.
Thank you for clarifying on that, James. So say we have an existing seller that wants to improve the visibility of all their marketplaces. What advice would you give them beyond connecting to Merchant Spring?
Yeah, look, I think, beyond Merchant Spring, there's a lot of resource out there on kind of, on the concept of visibility of multi-channel selling. Because I think the needs of different sellers are very different, but depending on what channels they're selling on and where they're based. And I think, Robert, I know you yourself, you're putting out a white paper, right, about this this whole topic that we're covering. So I would probably recommend starting there, just to kind of, as a seller, if you're starting out, to your point, right, you kind of want to sharpen your thinking about what you need to be looking at closely, how you're going to get it, and what's really, really important versus what's not, etc. So look, I think for the viewers out there, I'd start with the white paper that you've got, Robert, that you've prepared. And really, like, I think to kind of complement what's going on, like, if, for example, we were talking about profit earlier, but if you're a seller and perhaps or you have visibility of all the things that are going on, but maybe you've got content issues, like maybe you should look for kind of other tools and that can surface metrics on the periphery, such as listing quality. For example, we also have a free-to-use listing quality auditor, which essentially reads all the listings on the marketplace and says, hey, hey, James, your listing is X percentage because of the title, the description, or the images, or whatever. So all I'm saying there is, if you're starting out, just go for resources. I mean, to plug Robert here, get the white paper, try out free tools, diagnose yourself. Then from there, you got a better idea of what you need, what you need to be looking at more closely.
Thank you so much, for clarifying on that. In closing, do you have any final tips for our viewers that are listening?
Yeah, look, I mean, my biggest tip is marketplaces as a whole are completely the hottest space in the world right now. Whether you're talking about exiting through aggregators, or you're an agency, or you're a seller, I think it's a crazy space, and just hang in there. Like, I think the future is bright for everyone in the marketplace selling space, wherever you are in the world. So, I just want to say to everyone, keep selling.
Yep. Perfect. And actually, thank you so much for being on the show. Make sure that you grab a copy of the white paper or the lead magnets. I'll leave a link in the description box below this video for you guys to check out, as well as a direct link to the team at Merchant Spring. James, thank you again for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Can't wait to have you on the show again.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it, mate.